This covers problem 3 from chapter 14. In this one, we've learned that a company has taken an action that we think is good news, and it's impacted what you think they'll pay in dividends. So you think that they'll pay $8 a share in dividends next year. You also think that the dividends paid should increase by 6% each year indefinitely, and you have a required return of 7.4% on this investment. They want you to calculate first the estimated value of the company's stock price. Now, I forgot to increase the size of my screen before I started recording the video, so it looks a little weird right now. I'm going to use the same formula for parts A, B, and C, and the formula comes from chapter 13. It's this particular one. To find the value of common stock that we expect to have a constant growth rate, I need to take the dividends that I anticipate next year and divide by the required rate of return minus that constant growth rate. This is, I think, page 421 in the 5th edition of the textbook. I don't have an electronic copy of the 6th edition handy to tell you what page that's on. But the formula that I'm going to use is going to be the dividend next year divided by the required rate of return, which I just write as triple R, minus the constant growth rate. So for question A, the estimate of the value of the common stock, the dividend next year is expected to be $8. Divide that by the required rate of return. This I need to convert to a decimal. So instead of entering 7.4, I need to enter 0.074. That's my required rate of return, and the constant growth rate was that 6% that they think the dividend's going to rise by each year. And again, I need to enter that as a percentage, so 0.06. So there is my expected stock price. B asks, what would the value of the stock be if I didn't anticipate any increase in the dividend over time? So for B, I would use the same dividend of $8, divide by the required rate of return of 0.074, and this time I just expect a 0% growth rate. So I can subtract 0 or just leave that off. It doesn't matter, I'll get the same answer, whether I minus 0 or leave the 0 off. So I think it's only worth $108. So I think it's worth a lot less if they don't grow, which should hopefully make sense intuitively to you. C says if the required rate of return increased to 11.1%, what would happen to the stock price? And I'm viewing this as relative to part A, not to part B. So I would still have that $8 dividend. I'm still going to have that 6% growth, but instead of a 7.4% required rate of return, I've got an 11.1% or 0.111 as my required rate of return, and I subtract that constant growth rate of 6% or 0.06. Because my required return is rising, I basically think perhaps the company is riskier than I thought it was in part A with that 7.4% required return. There's more risk associated with those future dividends, so they'll have a lower present value. So the value will drop compared to part A, which is exactly what happened.